Welcome to the Be Your Soul podcast. I'm your host, Sky Bradshaw. Today, we build ourselves up to being the architect of our own destiny, and each of the 3 segments will go a little deeper into this topic. So be sure to listen through to the end for helpful tips, tools, and guidance on how to do the work. In the Skylight segment of today's show, we are honored to have an expert on the topic in our guest, Dr. Tomi Bryan. Before we dive into the Unclouded Heart segment for spirit messages of wisdom, let's invite ourselves to become present in this moment within our body, mind, and energy. Take a moment to invite yourself to take some deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. And in through your nose and out through your mouth. And as you breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, allow your body to relax, 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 relax. Relax, 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 relax. Relax, 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 relax. And as we move into this space of complete relaxation, we open up our energies to the ancestors, loved ones, and friends to come together today to heal and guide us and lift us to the highest version of ourselves in the light of the universe, so we may hear what we need to hear, know what we need to know, connect how we need to connect, and be what we need to be, allowing ourselves to give and receive for our highest and best good, and the highest and best good of all involved. Being the architect of our own destiny. It is people's innate desire to find purpose and meaning, feel fulfilled, rise above the confines of limiting ego, connect to their true inner selves, belong to something larger than themselves, triumph over fear, and tap into a greater energy beyond themselves. It is also people's innate nature to do what is safe instead of unknown, be contented, get caught up in comparison and control, be fearful of vulnerability, follow the crowd, and isolate as a defense mechanism. Therefore, as humans, we find ourselves often pulled between that which we desire and our true nature to survive. I think when we look at being the architect of our own destiny, it is of vital importance that we allow our soul self to hold the pencil. That means that we can bring awareness to our limiting beliefs and safe, focused nature, while also using them as tools to create a healthier container for our soul self and brave dreaming to take place. One thing I know is that each time I participate in the or instead of the and, I am making a choice towards limiting belief. If I embrace that I have both desire and nature, then allow them to work in conjunction with each other, I build a higher path towards destiny alignment. Just like a structural architect brings function and aesthetics into their design, we want to make sure that we make space for both what may be our nature as well as what is our desire. I truly believe that embracing the whole self in shadow and in light means we are creating a path plan to our highest and best self by starting where we are. This may feel and even be a little uncomfortable. We are often taught denial, told to only show our good side, and have social constructs that support the comparison and competition. The truth is, the power is in accepting ourselves just as we are in this moment and using that space of non-judgment, self-love, and acceptance as a foundation on which to build.
Production of the Be Your Soul podcast is made possible in part by Tarot by Sky, because it's your future. Tarot by Sky offers intuitive tarot and energy healing sessions, as well as life coaching, classes, spiritual guidance, and more. Offering sessions via Zoom, email, phone, or in the office in Greensboro, North Carolina, Sky is ready to help you turn change into growth. Book your session today on the web at tarotbysky.com and find her on Facebook and Instagram at Tarot by Sky. Coming up next, a conversation with Dr. Tomi Bryan about being the architect of your own destiny.
Today, we're excited to welcome Dr. Tomi Bryan to the show. She has a long and storied career of creating space for others to find their best selves through the tools she designs. Whether it is through systems, processes, activities, worksheets, the books that she's written, or her personal and corporate coaching, she enthusiastically invites people to find and live the life of their dreams through emotional balance. She is such a sweet soul who I hold very dear, and I am so happy to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, I know that others can't see you, but as I was watching you read that stuff, I was watching you smile, and I was thinking, oh, she knows the real Tomi, and she knows that's just a load of hooey, right?
No, it is not. It is not. It's true. All those things are true. That's what makes me smile. You embrace all those aspects.
Well, thank you for that and that lovely introduction.
Your original true self, as well as that sweet person who offers so much to the world. It's so beautiful.
Well, thank you. It's my privilege to be with you today.
I am honored. So, we're going to talk about the topic of being the architect of your own destiny. And, we've recently had some conversations, and whenever I think of matching topic with guest and how we can get some nuggets out into the world to the listeners, like that matched up so perfectly with you. And, I feel like not only through your writing, but just your presence and being, you really set that tone of, like, I'm going to stand in the center and look, forward in this way of like creating a structure, a system, those things that really open up space for people to be able to be their authentic self while we're walking through the labyrinth of life. That's, what I think. So when you think of that, being the architect of your own destiny, what does it mean for you? And why do you think it plays a major role in staying whole and empowered for people?
Well, first of all, what you just reflected back to me, and Sky, I don't know about you, but I just cry about everything because it's such a beautiful life. And you were bringing tears to my eyes because one of my goals was to become the invitation to balance, right? To be the invitation to others to find their best self through balance. And I heard you reflecting that back to me a little bit, and my heart melted a little. So thank you for that.
Of course, it's true.
Yeah, but being the architect of your own destiny is about the experiences of our lives either define us or we define them. If we're allowing them to define us, we're usually attempting to control life through a protective stance of resistance. And that means we are not the architect. We're defaulting to what's happened to us.
Yeah.
Right. And so if we're defining them, when we define them, we're choosing to create through collaborative connection with the different elements of the system of humanity. The authentic self, others, and life, right? The life forces, the universal principles, whatever you call those. And it's about using our emotional scars as guides, not guards. And I think that's the definition of empowerment and wholeness right there. Is when we get to the place that those emotional scars are guides and not guards, we're really close to where we came here to be, right?
Yeah, I agree. And, one of the things I always like to remind people, we can get really caught up into what I consider like false positivity, which is like nothing ever happens. Life is perfect. I'm going to live in nirvana and never have a problem ever in the world. And, that's not life. We're on the planet with billions of other souls. And so, things are going to happen, but true positivity is having that structural system within ourselves to trust ourselves and know that when something does happen that wasn't planned or not, what we thought was going to happen, that we have the tools and the resources and the ability and the self-trust and the guidance of the universe to be able to realign with whatever course that is, either bringing it back to our course or adapting to the new course in such a beautiful way. And I think that that's what you're talking about. If we have the design, then how we interact within the design is empowering. It's within us. It's not happening to us. We are creating a co-creation with the universe in order to have happen for us.
Yes, right. You said, as a systems girl, I'm over here vibrating in place, right? You're talking about structure. You're talking about all the things that I love. And so for me, you said such a key word, trust. I do a lot of corporate work, and trust is such a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And what's very difficult to convey to the world in a way that they hear it is, it's not that you don't trust the other person. It's that you don't trust yourself. Therefore, I cannot trust anyone else. And when you give them that reframe, they just can't hear it because they don't have the wisdom, the skill sets, the system structure to understand what that really means.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so trust is this big thing in the structure. Do I trust myself? And Sky, I don't know if we've talked about this, but I've created a bunch of assessments. And what the research on these assessments, right? We've had lots of people take them, thousands of people take these assessments, is people don't have the tools to get to wholeness. That's why only about 1% of the population would be considered in full wholeness, because we don't have it role modeled, so we can't imitate it. We don't have a book of the tools of wholeness, so we can't read about it and learn it. So we seem to be stuck in these repeating patterns of control and resistance instead of creating through profound, deep connections of collaboration.
Yeah. And that's one of my missions. It's one of the missions of the podcast in itself. When the one is strengthened, the sum is strengthened.
Yes.
And I feel like, when we tune in, even if it's a nugget here or a nugget there for another person, it's giving them that permission to see the world in a different way and see the world through their soul lens. Like that, a question that someone may ask 5 years ago might resonate tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I think it's our sole responsibility to ask those questions. And that's why I admire the work that you're doing so much, because even getting somebody to focus on taking a survey or doing an assessment shifts their vibration and the way that they're thinking. And even if they don't decide to take the medicine that day, like something has been planted inside of them that may give them permission later.
Yeah. And Sky, I don't know if this is true for you. I read James Hollis is one of my favorites. His CD set, which is about 6 hours long, Through the Dark Woods. I must have listened to it 4 or 5 times, right? And one of the things that and he's I think probably the foremost Jungian psychologist in the world right now. But one of the things that he talked about is when he hung out his shingle, that he noticed a certain type of client kept showing up for him. And it made him realize that, maybe there was a message in all of this for him as well. And I don't know if you've noticed it, but for me, I typically get clients who are ready to step into what I call the larger system. They know something needs to happen, but they don't know how to navigate the gap between where they are and where they want to be.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that's the client niche for me is, okay, this person needs to step into the larger system. How are we going to invite them to want to do that? Does that happen for you, that a certain type of client shows up?
Absolutely. And, you'll hear me talking about like the universal messages. And to me, since I'm kind of riding the vibration of the universe in the work that I do, I feel like that they will kind of follow cycles. And so, right now I feel like we're in this magnetization cycle. So people who are really trying to like call things present in their life and trying to take that next step, become the bigger version, and whenever I see that cycle, whatever it is, like we worked on the original question, last year, and we're working on, the amplification of that, of how are we looking out, and not only can I, but should I focus in the right way? What am I magnetizing, sort of energy. And then I see it in my life. I see in what I'm doing. And not only is it, relatable to the populace, relatable to the client in front of me, but also relatable to me. And then, you're in that sweet spot, you're in that right place.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. That's beautiful.
Yeah. So I'm a firm believer in direct route focus. So, like I like simplicity. My papa taught me, the more things you put between you and spirit, or the more things between you and spirit. So I like, direct views of things. So if you had to, kind of focus on three key ingredients in order to embrace that, being the architect of your own destiny, what would, three nuggets you could give to people there?
Yeah. So first of all, Sky, we're kindred spirits in that approach. I'm all about efficiency and effectiveness with ease, grace, and speed, right?
Yes.
And so for me, I think the first key is to make space in the emotional well for new things. And this model of emotional intelligence 3.0 that I've created, I talk about we each have an emotional well that sort of sits from below the chin down to, your pelvic area. And either it's filled, partially filled, or it's empty. Mm-hmm. And the goal is to get it to empty, right? And so many people are mired in their anger. And that emotional well is just filled with anger, which leaves room for little else. Mm-hmm. And there's almost no space for the good in the world to attract your attention if you're really angry. And a lot of people misunderstand anger, right? They'll say, well, I'm not angry. I've been betrayed. Okay, let's clarify that. You're angry because you've been betrayed. Anger is the thing underneath all of it in my world, in my experience. And so we have to let off the valve. We have to open up the valve a little bit and let the anger out so that others and life can have a space in there as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the second key is to have the courage to explore the authentic self. Across the arc of life, we receive so many messages that who we are is not enough, that who we are is not acceptable. It's not safe to be who I came here to be. So we stuff that authentic, true self deep down and throw away the key. Mm-hmm. To me, that path to wholeness, that path to empowerment requires us to reclaim that authentic self.
Absolutely.
And I think discovering the authentic self is a simple formula of 5 values. What are your top 5 values? What are your top 5 strengths, your social currency, and your purpose? Those are the essence of the authentic self. And then the third key is we have to not only discover the authentic self, but we have to embrace it, others, and the flow of life. Only then can we join the flow of life and allow the grander creations we came here to be in service of. Only then can they emerge through us. So I think those are the 3 things. And those are not easy things. Those are really, those are really big things.
No, we got it now. We're good.
Yeah, you're going to do that over dinner tonight, right?
I don't even have to do another podcast. Everybody will be fine now. We're fine. No. Yeah, I agree. And that acceptance piece to me is also really important in that structure that you're talking about. All of those things have a level of acceptance, in them. And I say constantly, and people are probably tired of hearing it, like if you don't know where you are, you can't map where you're going. Like
exactly.
You have to start at point A. If every time you turn on your GPS, it started at the interstate and you weren't home, you didn't know where you were, didn't know how to get to the interstate, like it's going to create undue struggle. So tuning in and tapping into that like acceptance of this space, then we can map out where we're going in such a beautiful way. And I think all of those embrace that, in different ways, which is also beautiful, because, I can say accept yourself all day long, but if we don't know what that looks like and how to do it, that's what you kind of outlined, which is lovely.
Scott, I think that's a very insightful comment. I spent some time with a relative a couple of weeks ago who kept saying to me, well, I keep telling my children to be who they are. And finally I said, that's a really beautiful notion, but if they don't know how to do that, it's never going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not be who you are, it's be who you are. And here's a possible way to do that,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that they can actually, because, I've been mesmerized by how we learn, right? Most of us grow up and our story is either we embrace what our parents are or we resist it. That's all we know. We either role model what they did or we resist what they did. And so there's this third option of learning something new. But if I don't see the steps for that, and Sky, I call it my 20 years in the desert, right? I read over 2,000 books. I went all over the world learning sort of the ancient wisdoms. I went to Germany for a week. I walked on fire by moonlight in California on the beach, right? Because where else do you do that, right? Trying to, because I thought, Sky, a book existed that said, if you want to find your purpose, it's 3 steps forward, 2 to the left, 1 to the right, and then over 3 more, and you'll be there. And nothing like that exists. And so for me, the 20-year journey has been about how do I map my current state and then everything that happens to me until I get to presence wholeness, which is my version of wholeness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm there. I think I've mapped it all, but you never know, right? I tell people I've built a system that says I'm in wholeness. So your first response should be, I'm suspect of that. If it says I'm whole, right? You should be suspect.
Right.
But that was all about the fact that there aren't clear steps.
Right. And I think that there are so many directions and instructions to the opposite that we're just quagmired in, because the be a good person, well, you don't say what a good person is, or show your best side, or be polite. Like all of these things are like create a lot of facade energy. While they all may be true, because they're half stories, they create confusion inside of us. So like be a good person is relative to the person and what their beliefs are and who they are and what that means. And be polite often asks us to, if we look at the unhealthy version of what we're often taught, it means abandoning the self for someone else's feelings. And so we have all of these impressions that we're given that are actually the opposite, and then we look and go, but there is, where are my impressions of what you were just talking about? Where is the instruction on what you're just talking about? And so I feel like that's part of the beauty of the work that you're doing, is like putting it out there. And the podcast that we're on right now, like all of these things are meant to not be the right and verse, total end all be all of, the perfect way to do things, but like at least counterbalancing those other things that show up to tell us to be the opposite.
Yeah, so Sky, that's a beautiful point. For years I practiced law, and I used to tell my clients, just do the right thing. And what I discovered is it's their version of the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not, because our experiences shape who we are. Your version of integrity and truth may have a very different flavor than mine,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so part of creating this model of emotional intelligence 3.0 is to create that consistency, to give us those tools so that we know that listen, I can't help but bring my experiences to the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But how do I allow them to inform me rather than control me?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think one of the resistances that people often have is asking for help or using a guide or, some other source that can really support the container of what they're trying to build. So do you have experience in that? And what advice would you give to someone who's got that, like, I got this alone mentality?
So as someone who's coached Fortune 500 executives, college students, and everything in between, I don't often run into this, I don't need your help syndrome, right? Because that's what I've got it alone is about. I
Mhm.
don't need your help, right?
Mhm.
For me, I've interpreted that as I'm looking for something that resonates with me, and this is not it,
Mhm.
right? Or it might not be their time and place. They simply can't hear it, the message. And then there
Mhm.
are people who simply do want to do it alone, right? But I
Mhm.
just haven't had that experience. I've more so had, like I had a coaching client who kept saying, why am I getting coaching? This is punishment. The organization paid for it, right? This is punishment. And I was like, no, this is a privilege, right?
Mhm.
But she was in such a place where, yeah, she just felt singled out. She felt like
Right.
I can't hear you, right? So for me, it's more about, letting people do what people do.
Mhm.
And if they're not interested or can't hear what I have to say, then maybe one day they'll find somebody who can
Yeah.
reach them, and it's just not me. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's been my
Yeah.
experience.
In my experience, a lot of times, especially, I sometimes people would say I'm like the healer's healer. So like a lot of people who are who are helping others, I'm helping them, and which I find a really sacred and beautiful space. I'm super grateful to be able to do that for people. But I often hear, especially in those aspects, like, well, you know, do what I say, not what I do. And like the healer is not going, like, when they're coming to me, obviously they're asking for help. But before that point, I usually see that there was a buildup or a resistance before they got to me that said, I am,
Okay, Sky.
is backing up. And here I am.
Yes. Well, so actually, you're speaking into something you referenced a few minutes ago. We resist the authentic self, we resist others, and then we resist life. So my clients, when they show up and they say something that, they'll say something about the way they should be. And I said, oh, Sky, can you show me in the book of life, page and paragraph number where it says that?
Mhm.
Right. And they start giggling because they know it doesn't exist. Right. And so we have all these conventions, these conventional ways we show up. And there are three very specific attitudes about life, not about others, not about self, about the
Mhm.
way life should operate. And you're talking about one of them. And the first one is life's not fair.
Mm.
Something happens and, well, life is not fair, right? That's somebody caught in the book of life. It's written life's fair, and, well, it's not, people. The second one is what I call King of the Hill. And Sky, I don't know if you played King of the Hill when you were a child, but you'd get to the top and somebody try to push you off, right?
Mhm.
And so King of the Hill is the person, sort of that biblical, the one with the most toys wins, right?
Mhm.
And the third one is what you're talking about. The third one is this belief of helping is noble. And
Mhm.
I must give and not receive is an absolute kind of principle in that mindset, in that life view. And so part of what you're talking about, it feels like, now that I hear what you're saying in a different way, of this, I've got this alone. It's not that I've got this alone. I'm trapped in a structure that tells me I must help others and not get help myself, right? And unfortunately, boy, the universe, the life, the system of humanity pounds into us. It's better to give than to receive. Helping
Right.
is noble. Yeah, so why would it's almost a last resort before I will get help for myself.
Right. And, I always like to remind people when they're in that resistant state that everything in nature is balance. If there's a pond and there are too many fish, it's going to grow algae to change the fish population. If there's too much algae, it's going to grow more fish and they're going to eat that. It's going to correct itself in order to create balance. And the fact that we feel, no, it's taught that we're meant to give and not receive is participation in imbalance instead of
Yes.
focusing on the idea that, like, in order to keep this infinite energy flowing through me, I must give and receive.
100%. And that's the last round of research I did showed me that in such a powerful way that I restructured the model of emotional balance around it.
Wow.
Yeah. And so you're 100% onto part of the reason why people, it's not that I got this alone. It's I'm not able to receive. I'm only supposed to give. And Sky, I'm sure you've seen this as I have. That can be catastrophic. That can
Absolutely.
actually take someone's not only emotional well-being but physical well-being in a negative direction, and I don't want that for anyone.
I don't either. And I also feel like, one of the lessons I had to learn very early in my practice as a healer, as a giver, in those spaces, is that it also, we're not empowering ourselves to the fullness of what spirit has divined for us. Because if I'm limiting myself by thinking I'm only giving or only receiving, then I'm not in alignment with that divine destiny. Like, divine destiny says, expand, be full, be whole, be connected. And in order to do so, I must have food source. I must have energetic, emotional, physical fuel for the work that I'm doing. So
Yeah.
it's in alignment with divine alignment to be able to continue that.
That expansion, right? The book title is Emotional Intelligence 3.0: How to Stop Playing Small in a Really Big Universe, right? And it's that, so that expansion that you're talking about is a very important element of wholeness. And I know you probably talk to your clients about this. We fall asleep and forget, right? We
Mhm.
forget how large we are. And so, one of the things that I do as part of self-care every day is I do one of two things. If my first favorite thing is a long, luxurious hot bath in lavender salt, right? And I just let all the day wash off of me. But if I'm not in a place to be able to do that, then right before falling asleep, I contemplate infinity.
Wow.
Right. So I have a couple of practices that allow me to go out in the universe and the cosmos and look back at the earth and just shower it with love. Right. Because if I'm that big, the person who cut in front of me at lunchtime is irrelevant. Right. And so for me, trying to make sure that I constantly contemplate infinity is a large part of maintaining that constant expansion.
Beautiful. So you've already answered one of the 3 questions that I ask every guest. So we'll move on to that, because that's your self-care, which is like, I might just borrow that and mimic it a little bit.
Go for it.
That's a beautiful image. So what do you think it means to be your soul?
Hmm. Well, so when we're embodying our soul, we're in wholeness. We're balancing the human and the divine. We're not one or the other, we're both. I think we're expressing reverence for all of life and using our power to choose by creating bigger and bigger things that are in service of making the world a better place and creating personal joy, right? It's that allowing of the system of life and participating with it in a way to create bigger and bigger things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so what does feeling centered and balanced look like in your life?
To be love in every moment, not to do it, but to be it. And love will guide me on how to engage in balance in each moment. And sometimes that means doing nothing, right? Sometimes I think it was a guy, what was her name? King. Her definition of equanimity is, I can allow what is here and offer what is needed, right? That to me is the balance, right? Is that I do not get wound up about anything that's in front of me. And then I wait for the cue from the flow of the universe to say, Tomi. And sometimes I say it's the divine Tomi talking to the human Tomi. The divine Tomi will say, you know what you need to do right now? Just wrap your arms around this person and say, wow, that must have hurt. How can I support you in this moment? Sometimes it's engaging the bully.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's doing nothing. And so it's really about being patient enough to wait. Oh, there's the cue. Act.
Yes. Yeah, that's one thing, I advise people a lot because, I work with people trying to tune into their intuitions often. And a lot of times we feel like the intuition is like, a Blair gun at the beginning of a race. And we like get an intuition and we're like, go, let's make it. I'm going to do the 60-second dash instead of pausing and then reflecting and reconnecting to that intuition and giving that space. Because, if we hear, hey, and we go running towards it, we don't know, hey, what? We don't know
Right.
what the finish of that sentence is. And so I think, in life in general, I am a huge fan of the pause. And that is like my biggest self-care to me, probably, if I had to answer that question, is pause. Like pause is my self-care.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I've developed this rhythm. I wouldn't say I've trained myself because my whole family knows I'm not trainable. It's just not possible.
That's another thing where we're like,
it's like kindred spirits. I've gotten into a rhythm. You can call it the power hour, you can call it the witching hour, but usually sometime between 4:30 and 5:30 in the morning, I'm awoken by an idea of what I should be doing next. And I'll lay there for 30 or 45 minutes and turn that over. Sometimes I have to get up right away and act on it. But usually it's the result of something I was marinating on that I didn't even realize I was marinating on. And now the universe has given me some guidance. And then I just get up and do that. And I find that life is so much richer and magical when I do that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. Yes. So it was so great and amazing to spend time with you. I super appreciate you bringing your wisdom and guidance to the show. Are there any, let our listeners know how to find you, but also are there any upcoming events or anything that you have that you want to showcase?
Well, thank you for that opportunity. I joke, it's really hard to find me at tomibryan.com. Right? And then, and Tomi Bryan, there aren't a whole lot of us. So if you're looking to connect on Facebook or LinkedIn, it's Tomi Bryan. It's not hard to find me. The website is tomibryan.com. And it's TOMIBRYAN. I always joke I'm the lady with two men's names, Tomi and Bryan. And then, we do a certification once a year for coaches, well-being practitioners or counselors who want to use the material of Emotional Intelligence 3.0 in their practice. And that's coming up in January. And I also tell people, you don't have to be a practitioner to participate. If you want to take a personal journey to wholeness, you can join. And it's a 6-month program, twice a month, 90 minutes via Zoom. And so if anybody has any interest in that, they can reach out to me. I would love to have folks join our next workshop starting in January.
Awesome. Thank you. That is a really good nugget. I'm sure there's going to be lots of interest. So thank you so much for being here. And we also want to send a warm and embracing hug of gratitude to our listeners. Thank you, dear listener, for choosing to connect with us today and making us part of your journey. Be sure to listen through as the next segment brings forward tools and tips on how to do the work.
Production of the Be Your Soul podcast is made possible in part by Little Energies, a children's chakra-aligned oracle deck. Little Energies is made specifically for children to learn and support their own healthy energy system. These 24 chakra-aligned oracle cards focus on energy wellness through mantras, exercises, and envisioning. Find more information at littleenergies.com. That's LITTLEENERGIES.com. Next, Sky presents tips on integrating this topic of being the architect of your own destiny into your own life.
In this segment, I offer tools and guidance that I have found helpful in my practice, and maybe you will too. This week, we will work on 3 ways to become the architect of our own destiny. Do you know the difference between manifesting, intention setting, and envisioning? Most people think this is just thinking things into existence and often have a hard time creating success around it. Let's clarify the difference between these energies and how we can interact with each of them in our lives. Manifesting is the energy of directing enough like energy thought towards a goal as that goal moves closer to you due to the like energy attracts like energy rule of magnetization. This means that conscious, focused energy, usually through prayer, meditation, or other mindful activities, changes the base energy of the manifester to draw forward the goal's energy into their reality. Intention setting is a set or series of focuses, usually directed through wording and communication, which focus at a specific goal. They change the destiny alignment of the person setting the intention by bringing step-by-step actions into alignment within their destiny path to achieve that goal. Intention setting allows for a present moment mindset of seeing the clear path to the goal through daily direct focus. Envisioning is imagining a goal and allowing the self to see and feel what accomplishing the goal might look like. It usually is achieved through a daily guided meditation where the envisioner sees themselves walking through each step to achieve the goal and then a climax point of success. Through this, the envisioner repatterns their energy to align with success energy, so their mind, body, and spirit naturally flow towards obtaining the goal. For today's show, I'm going to offer one example of how you can create space for each one of these energies in your life. Remember, you aren't limited to using this information only once, so you can try your hand at manifestation, intention setting, and envisioning whenever you feel called. Let's look at manifestation first. In order to manifest, we must first affirm what we want in a clean, clear, and somewhat specific way. If we're creating an energy magnet, then we want to know that what we are magnetizing is what we truly want. My suggestion is to look at 9 ingredients that make up what you're trying to manifest and write them on a white 7-day glass pillar candle in Sharpie. Then, on a plain piece of paper, write the total encompassing goal and fold it, placing it underneath the candle. Surround the candle with whatever you feel called to make it a bit of sacred space for the work that is to be done. Then, each day for 21 days, light the candle for at least 5 minutes, reading the ingredients out loud, and watch your goal move closer to you. A good way to get intentions off the ground is to set them energetically forward through sacred space. This can be as simple as creating an intention board or as complicated as a private intention setting ceremony. A simple suggestion is to create a vision board that tells the story of your intentions. You can use magazine cutouts, color and create it yourself, or any combo of things. Gather your materials, create your board, then light a candle, setting the space for your guides to come forward and help create and realize your intentions. Be sure that you display this board in a place where you will look at it daily. In order to focus on envisioning, we need to write the story of our success before it happens. Sit down with your journal or some blank sheets of paper and start writing the story of how you will accomplish your goal, all the way through to a big stamp of success at the end. By creating an emotional bond to your envisionment, it allows your energy to become invested in it, so making the story feel real with lots of juicy details is important. You can do this by tapping into the emotion of what accomplishment feels like and the story of what success may be. Sit with that feeling and draw it to you by reading the story each morning or each night. While you read the story, allow yourself to feel in the story as it energetically opens doors for you. These are just small bites of tips and tools that you can take home and use for yourself. As with any energy work, you want to make sure you embrace it with love and gratitude, call on energies for your highest and best good, and release the outcome. Greater details and more specific instructions can be found on our Patreon. Now, get out there and magnetize your world. May you be well, may you find peace, may you feel blessed, and may you be whole.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Be Your Soul podcast. Our Patreon has early access listening and PDF worksheets of this and all episode exercises for as little as $5 a month. As you move up in tiers, you can get masterclass level video tutorials, bonus meditation tracks, and more. Patreon is a great way to show your appreciation for the hard work and dedication that goes into bringing these messages to you. You can find all our episodes, our Patreon link, guest information, the virtual classroom, and more on our website, beyoursoul.org. This podcast is produced at Muddy Creek Studios.